He was about to drive away from the valet stand until he saw a little boy, no older than 8, scrubbing car tires with torn gloves and blistered hands. The boy looked up, smiled, and said, "I'm saving for my mom's medicine, sir." The CEO's hands froze on the steering wheel. Karan Sethi wasn't the kind of man who stopped. His time was calculated in minutes, his presence in boardrooms, and his thoughts in numbers. He was the youngest self-made CEO in the country, and every second mattered. But something about that little boy, hunched over a dusty SUV in the corner of the parking lot, made him pause. The boy's fingers were cracked, soaked in soap water, his tiny feet bare on hot concrete. Every few seconds he coughed, wiped his nose with his sleeve, and went back to work. Karan rolled down his window. "Hey, why are you doing this?" The boy looked up with wide brown eyes. "For my mom. She's sick. The hospital said we need 62,000 more." Karan blinked. 62,000 what? "Rupees," the boy said proudly. "I've saved 850 so far." Karan felt something shift deep in his chest. "Does your father work?" he asked softly. The boy's eyes dropped. He left. And then he stood up, chest rising like he didn't want pity. "But it's okay. I'm not scared. I can clean 20 cars a day. Maybe more if people don't yell." Something broke in Karan right then. Not because the boy was begging, but because he wasn't. Karan stepped out of his luxury car, ignoring the stares of his staff and the murmurs from the valet boys nearby. He walked straight over to the little boy, who instinctively stepped back, unsure if he was in trouble. "What's your name?" Karan asked gently. "Rudra," the boy replied, standing straighter. "I'm 9. Karan knelt down to his level. "Where's your mom now?" "At the hospital near Sector 12, Rudra said. "Room 302. They said if I can't pay in 3 days, they'll stop giving her the injections. But it's okay," he added quickly. "I'm fast. I'll get it." Karan felt something in his throat tighten. Rudra's voice wasn't panicked. It was steady, like he'd already accepted the weight the world had dumped on his tiny shoulders. "I'll take you to her," Karan said, standing up. Rudra blinked. "But I still have 5 cars left to clean." Karan smiled softly. "Don't worry. I'll pay you double for those. Right now, let's go see your mom." They sat in silence during the drive. Rudra stared out the window, fiddling with the edge of his shirt sleeve. Karan watched him through the mirror, wondering how many other children were carrying burdens no child should know. When they reached the hospital, Rudra led him up the stairs with familiar steps. The room was dim, quiet, and smelled like antiseptic. On the bed lay a frail woman, barely awake, her breathing slow and labored. "Ma," Rudra whispered, placing a hand on her arm. "I brought someone." She turned her head weakly. Her eyes widened at the sight of Karan in his tailored suit. "Namaste," she said, voice raspy. "Sorry, I didn't know Rudra was troubling people." Karan stepped forward. "He didn't trouble me, ma'am. He reminded me of what strength really looks like." And then he pulled out his phone, called his assistant, and said 6 words that would change everything. "Clear her medical bill. Full amount." The room fell silent. Rudra stared up at Karan, wide-eyed, not quite understanding. "What do you mean? Like, all of it?" Karan crouched beside him, hand gently on the boy's shoulder. "Every rupee, Rudra. You don't have to wash another car." Rudra's lip quivered. "But I promised her I'd do it. I told her I'd fix it." Karan smiled, his voice soft. "You did. You brought her hope. And now you let someone else carry the rest, just like she carried you all these years." Rudra turned to his mother, who was crying silently, her hand trembling as she reached for her son. "I didn't want this life for him," she whispered. "He should be in school, not begging for help outside." Karen's jaw tightened. He wasn't begging. He was fighting, with more courage than most grown men I know. He stood and looked down at her gently. From today, everything changes. You'll get the best treatment. And Rudra? He turned to the boy. You're going to school. We'll make sure of it. Books, meals, everything. But why would you do this for us? Rudra's mom asked, still overwhelmed. You don't even know us. Karen paused. My mother passed away alone in a government hospital bed while I was too busy climbing ladders. That didn't matter. I promised myself that if I ever saw someone else's mother at that same edge, I'd never let her fall. Tears streamed down her cheeks, and Rudra, not knowing what else to do, hugged Karen. Tight, desperate, and full of the kind of gratitude words couldn't hold. The CEO who had built empires out of numbers stood quietly in the arms of a little boy who had built his world out of nothing but love. That night, as city lights flickered outside hospital windows, Karan sat beside Rudra and his mother, quietly sipping chai from a paper cup the hospital staff had insisted he take. No cameras, no press release. Just a man rediscovering what it meant to feel human. Rudra had fallen asleep with his head resting on his mother's lap, finally at peace for the first time in weeks. She gently stroked his hair, her tired eyes now soft with relief. You didn't just pay a bill, she said quietly. You gave me my son back. You gave him back his childhood. Karan didn't reply right away. He just watched Rudra sleep. Do you know what it feels like to miss your mother's voice and still remember it louder than the rest of the world? He said after a pause. That's how I live every day. She looked at him, surprised by the honesty in his voice. He smiled faintly. But today, I think I heard it again, in the way your son fought for you. That's the kind of love that builds legacies, not money. Before he left, he handed her a small envelope. Inside is a full scholarship for Rudra. Uniforms, supplies, even a tutor if needed. He deserves a future that isn't built on scraped knees and dirty rags. She opened her mouth to protest, but he stopped her gently. No more apologies. You've done enough. Now it's our turn. He stood up, took one last look at the sleeping boy, and said, He's going to grow up and do something big. I feel it. As Karan walked out into the night, the world outside looked the same. But inside him, everything had changed. Because true power isn't in what we build for ourselves. It's in what we rebuild for others, when the world has tried to break them. If this story touched you, share it. Because sometimes the richest hearts wear dusty clothes, and the wealthiest hands are the ones that choose to lift. Love